What is going on YouTube? In this video, we're going to do an update on our two male leopard geckos that both had prolapsed hemipenes from breeding. Selling in the billions each year, Rainbow Mealworms is your one-stop shop for all your insect needs. Visit them today at rainbowmealworms.net to place your order. I want to take this time to shout out Redline Shipping. They are the #1 fastest growing reptile and animal shipping company in the world right now, and that is for good reason. Use promo code GECKO5 today at checkout for an additional $5 off your shipping label. Alright, so while these boys have had their issues, I've been checking on them about once every 4 to 5 days, and each time I've checked on them, I have refreshed their paper towel and checked on them to see the progress of their hemipene hopefully going back in. Both times it was starting to go back in, and now this is the third check, and this was the worst boy. If you remember, he was the thumbnail cover of the episode, and you could see that his hemipene was actually a bit red, maybe a little bit swollen. That was the one I was most concerned about, but you can see it's gone completely back in and is completely back to normal. So if you missed that video, check it out here in the top right corner so you can see how we healed this boy. Now, even though he is 100% healed right now, I'm going to give him one more quarantined type setup. So he is not going to get Eco Earth. I'm going to rinse out his cage really well to protect him from any possible bacteria that might be here, which is something that I would not normally do for a leopard gecko. But because he had exposed hemipenes, you want to protect them from infection. All right, so I cleaned his humid hide. We'll put that off to the side. He's just chilling over there in the chilling tub. Okay, now even though I didn't need to do all this for him technically, I think it's beneficial just to give him one more round of quarantined observation. So I'm going to give him brand new newspaper, freshly washed tub. We are not going to give him Eco Earth. We're going to do one more round of double paper towel. Fold it up, put in the humid hide, sprayed down generously. You don't want it to be a pond or a pool in there, but you spray it down generously. It lasts for a few days. That was the method that we were able to cure him. Again, fresh food. He's still not done growing yet, so we want him to grow nice and big and strong so he can keep breeding for us. I like to put the water dish on the side where the newspaper is not too high up on the wall so that it doesn't fall into the water. Because what happens, the newspaper falls into the water and then it soaks into the whole thing, and the whole thing winds up becoming really, really moist for a few days. Now, what I forgot to do, because I was talking, is actually soak him in some barely lukewarm water for about 5 minutes. So we're doing that now with him right there. You can see him just chilling, loving life. Now, the reason that I soak them in the water is because the water helps to loosen up any dryness around their hemipenes, any stuck skin, anything that just might be a little bit dry, which is why we have the hide here so moist, is because when a hemipene is out, you just want to make sure it doesn't dry up, because it can dry up, shrivel up, and fall off, and you don't want that. If possible, you want him to be able to save that hemipene, get it back into his body, and reuse it for future use with the girl. Now, here's a little fun fact. I actually checked on these guys last night, so I actually knew what the situation was going into today, because yesterday was the day that I was supposed to check them and make sure everything's okay, but I did not have time to shoot the video yesterday. So, same treatment for this boy. This boy was actually less severe of a prolapsed hemipene than the first boy, but unlike the first boy, he still has a little bit, very, very little, retained outside of his body. Last night it was a little bit more. Today is even less. Actually, I can't even see any of it today retained outside of his body. You could kind of see where it looks like maybe the straight line goes up in a jagged way right there. That's where like the hemipene was kind of stuck a little bit, you know, from dryness. So we're going to put him through the same treatment that we're currently putting the other gecko through. A bath, fresh everything, and then I believe this guy will be back to 100% after this next treatment. So this was a total of 3 treatments of this setup for these guys to get them back to normal, and thankfully everything went okay. All right, guys, here we got everything brand new. This gecko's a brand new man. I would play that song right now, but YouTube would probably take my monetization away, so I won't do that. But for you guys who don't know, Brand New Man by Brooks and Dunn, it is an amazing country song. So now we're going to flip these two. I'm going to put this boy back in his cage, and this boy's going to take the bath. Now again, what the bath is going to do is it's going to allow for all of that water to soak in around the gecko's hemipene and butt area. And then when they go back into their cage, that area will be soft and will be softer and softer compared to normal, and they could lick their hemipene back in. Now both of these guys have their hemipenes back in, but just in case underneath in their body, if it's not fully back in, I want the water to help them relax and help them lick and motion that hemipene back into the gecko's sac. And yes, geckos have a sac that they hold their hemipenes in that is used for reproduction. Now, while this guy is bathing here, let's talk about methods and care of dealing with hemipenes. The reason I made the video on this care style of getting hemipenes to cure is because there's so many different preferences out there and suggestions that people have. Some suggest put honey on it, put sugar on it. Sugar will reduce the swelling. Soak the gecko 3 times a day in warm water. Other people suggest take it immediately to a vet, have the hemipene removed. There are so many different extremes of answers. I wanted to show you how easy it is to deal with a hemipene prolapse. All you need to do is what I showed in this first video. Watch this first video. I go through it step by step. Our only treatment for these guys was about 2 to 3 weeks of a couple of times of cleaning their cage, keeping it clean, and using paper towel as a humid substrate for them in their humid hide. And that was it. Just water treatment. Nothing fancy. And the reason I'm making this follow-up video is to show you that it actually works. Now, if it doesn't work, if the hemipenes are getting more swollen or possibly infected looking with pus and all kinds of weird stuff growing on it and things are not improving, it's at that point that you would want to take it to the vet, because the vet could put it on antibiotics, and the vet could also try to hold the gecko down and physically push that hemipene back in. If they cannot physically push it back in, then they will suggest the option of removing the hemipene. Now, all of these are unnecessary and very expensive steps, in my opinion, and a lot of vets don't realize that the hemipene will just go back in on its own if you just give the gecko enough time in 99% of the scenarios. But let's say I took both of my geckos to the vet in this scenario. Immediately, the vets are going to start poking and prodding and trying to get that hemipene to go back in. And that could actually irritate the process more and slow down the process of the gecko actually healing itself. Remember, these geckos have no vets in the wild. They have to be able to deal with this themselves. In captivity, to prevent infection and to prevent the hemipene from drying up and falling off, we keep their cages clean and we keep their humid hides humid so that the geckos can stay bacteria free and have the proper humidity to get that hemipene back in. That's because we're really trying to keep our leopard geckos alive. Nature is not so nice. In the wild, some of these geckos will get an infection and die, or not be able to get their hemipene back in, causing issues for the gecko and die. That would happen in nature, yes, but I don't think surgery, poking and prodding, or removing the hemipene should be the first step. I think the first step should be exactly what we did in this video. Pure water treatment, pure humidity treatment. Let the gecko get it back in on its own. If that doesn't work, then you could take steps from that point forward to take the gecko to a vet and consider your options at that point. Now, one of the reasons this is near and dear to my heart is because a few seasons back, this happened with our crested gecko, where I took the gecko to the vet after a prolapsed hemipene, after I tried honey, sugar, water, Q-tip, everything like that to get the hemipene back in for the crested gecko. None of that worked. I took it to the vet. The vet was like, yeah, we immediately need to get this hemipene back in, charged me a bunch of money, got the hemipene back in, and then called me back for a follow-up visit to remove the stitches. Oh, that's another thing I forgot to mention. They will stitch the hemipene shut in your gecko, which I just think is completely unnecessary for 99% of the cases of prolapsed hemipene. So anyway, getting back to my story, they called me and they're like, hey, there's no charge for the follow-up visit. Come back in and we want to take a look at your gecko. My gecko had already lost the stitches, lost the sutures off of its ball sack, off of its hemipene sac there, and everything was looking normal. I went back in, they checked me out, they're like, okay, you could leave. I start walking out of the facility and I'm getting chased down by their receptionist. Hey, you didn't pay. And I just said, what? The vet told me it was a free follow-up visit. I already paid $400 the last visit to get you to stitch my gecko's hemipene back into its sac. And they're like, no, you don't have to pay any extra to see the doctor, but there is a follow-up fee of $50 that you need to pay. I was like, oh gosh, here's my $50. I'm never doing this again. So anyway, that kind of rubbed me the wrong way a little bit. I've since then loosened my perspective on veterinary care. I think it's very beneficial and highly encouraged to seek veterinary care specialists for reptiles. But what I'm saying is not every instance is required for them to see a vet. And here's the perfect example. Guess what happened? The next year, that same crested gecko prolapsed. And I started talking to more breeders that have had this scenario. And one of them, who I won't mention in particular because I don't want any hate coming down on this person for unnecessary reasons, said, oh yeah, this happens to some of my males. After 10 days or so, they usually lick it back in. So I said, okay, I'm going to give my gecko more time this time to lick it back in. I'm not going to try anything special, no honey, no sugar, none of that. And let me just see what happens. Just keeping its cage clean and moist and humid. Guess what? After 5 days, that gecko licked its hemipene back in and it was perfectly fine. And it's gone on to breed plenty of times since with no hemipene issues. Okay, so this boy's been soaking long enough. He is ready to rock and roll. All right, baby. Put him back in. We're going to put him back on the shelf and he'll be good to go. So what'd you think about this video? Guys? Have you had experiences with prolapsed hemipenes, veterinary care, non-veterinary care? Have you tried the sugar, water, honey, Q-tip system? What has been your experience? Let me know in a comment below. I would love to see that. We are growing at such an exponential rate over here with our channel. The little one's making a getaway. I love this little guy. Remember, if you want to see the full video of this guy, check it out here in the top right corner, and I will show you what their hemipenes look like in the original video. And this is only 3 weeks later, I think. I got to double check the dates, but everything's going really excellent over here. I thank you guys for subscribing. I thank you guys for liking, commenting, watching our videos, rewatching our videos. All of that helps so much. So until next time, my friends, have a geeky gecko great day, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.